probably don't even need this, but I'll try to use it anyways. So we're really deviating from aquatic veg now. I'm going full blown into the fish world. Maybe news to y'all, but as part of our new license we got in 2005, we had to put in a fish ladder at Box Canyon Dam, and never had one before. But those 3 species of native fish that we talked about before, native migratory salmonids, West Slope cutthroat, bull trout, and mountain whitefish, are in the river. They want to migrate up and down, and they haven't been able to since we put in the dam and Albany Falls put in their dam. So we were the first of the 3 dams to start the fish passage project. Unfortunately, we're the one in the middle, so we built a ladder to nowhere. But Albany Falls is really getting close to putting theirs in, so the fish will be able to eventually get to where they need to go. And we're really excited about that. But today I was just going to go over some of the little bits about the fishway, and we'll see what we get. Maybe. No, I have to start it first. Hold on a second. I think you messed it up. Something happened. All right. Okay, so goals of and the design considerations. We had to put in a fishway. The prescription that was given to us in our license was we have to provide safe, timely, and effective passage for the native salmonids, specifically bull trout, because they're the only one of the 3 that are listed on the endangered species list as threatened. But if you're going to build it for one, you might as well consider the needs of all 3. So we tried to put the design elements and considerations in for all 3 species. Unfortunately, unlike the salmon world, where smolts out-migrate as 4.5-inch fish to the ocean and rear, our backwards fish go both directions. The adults go downriver and up a creek and spawn, and then they don't die like good spawning fish should. They out-migrate again, and they want back up into the lake to rear and restore their nutrients so they can do it again. This gave us a lot of problems engineering-wise, because all you have to do is build a fish ladder for cookie cutter salmon that are all 18 to 24 inches long with great jumping abilities and fast swimming speeds. It's a lot easier because you have a smaller range of variables. Since we had to provide passage for not only the adults that can get up to 32 pounds, adult bull trout that are out migrating from Lake Monterey can get huge. I personally have caught one over 10 pounds in the river. It was a really good looking bull trout, but that's a 30-inch fish. So, but the offspring, what happens if we do get spawning in the creeks downstream of Box Canyon Dam, primarily Sullivan is probably where it will happen if it happens at all. Those fish will rear in the creek for 1 to 4 years and out-migrate as subadults or juveniles, which can be as small as 4 inches. So we had to design the fish ladder to pass not only these nice, big, healthy adults, but down as small as 4-inch subadults. So it was an engineering challenge, to say the least. I just want to go through the 3 target species, which you've seen, but maybe my pictures are better. That's a mountain whitefish, pretty healthy adult. That's West Slope cutthroat trout that actually came out of Sullivan Lake, out migrating downstream from the dam before the Mill Pond Dam was pulled out. And that's one of those large bull trout I was talking about. This one was about 5 pounds. All right, some more of the challenges. When we started, there was very little known about the migratory behaviors of bull trout, and even less known about whitefish, because really, who cares about whitefish? So we were starting with a blank slate. We had to do a lot of telemetry work where we put in those radio tags that somebody was talking about earlier and track their movement, try to figure out when they want to go past our project, and if they do, where do they want to go. One of the biggest challenges about building a fish ladder is that you can build a beautiful fish ladder that meets all the criteria, but if you put the entrance in the wrong spot, they'll swim right past it and never go up. So luckily, the Corps has put in a lot of really useless fish pad ladders in the Columbia, so we learned a lot from all their mistakes. And so We spent a lot of time figuring out where we wanted to put the entrance first. And then what we ended up doing is just putting in multiple entrances. So in case we got it wrong, we have other ones to use. Ideally, since our fish want to migrate year round, the juveniles, especially bull trout, migrate in the middle of winter. Fish should be holding up and doing nothing, but that's when they want to go, because there's, I believe, mostly because there's less predation. So little fish can make it up to the big water without having to run through the gamut of predators that time of year. But regardless of why, they want to go through their year round. Unfortunately, we also had to have a hands-on sorting and tagging for any of the fish we go upstream. So we had to build a trap and haul. It wasn't a volitional fish ladder like the ones you see on the Columbia, where the fish can just go step to step till they get to the top and then swim on. Ours go step to step until they get to the trap at the top. Then we crowd them, raise them in a big elevator, and sort them so we can send the good species upstream, send the bad species downstream. And then the Ridley 3 special species, we set aside, do surgery on, and then haul them upstream and drop them off so they don't get sucked back down through the dam. But in doing that, we can't run year round because we have too many moving parts and the thing freezes up in the winter. So can't be year round, but we tried to make it as useful as possible and extend it out as far as we can. So this is the overview of what it looks like. Might have a pointer here. So this has got some cutaways. This has an outer wall that was cut away. So you can, see the inside steps, moving step to step from the fish ladder. It's called a half ice harbor design. So it's got an entrance or a hole that the lazy fish don't have to jump over the weir. They can shoot through the bottom. It's called an orifice. So fish can go from step to step by jumping over each weir, or they can swim under, or any variation thereof. It's got two main entrances. This is gate 2, this is gate 1. This one, if you saw the rest of the dam up here, these are the 4 generators that extend this way, moving downstream. And this entrance shoots water attraction flow over into the turbine boil area, just downstream of where the turbines release water. This one shoots out toward the spillway. So what we learned from our telemetry is fish want to migrate. When they're migrating upstream, they go, of course, into the current. So they're looking for 2 things. They're looking for the upstream terminus, the farthest up they can go before they hit an obstruction, or they are looking for the highest velocity water. So we oriented our 2 entrances to take advantage of that. When we're spilling, we can open this one up and attract the fish that are attracted to that high velocity water in the spillway. And when we're not, then we've got always have flow coming out of the dam through the units, so we can orient our attraction flow that way. So once they come in, they start going up the fish ladder. There's 27 steps to get to the trap at the top, and each of the corners are oversized resting pools for the smaller fish because they get wore out before they get all the way to the top. When they get to the trap at the top, there's called a V trap. So it's an upstream pointing V, and they swim through it, and then they get confused. They can't get back out. When we first started this, went into operation fall of 2021 was the first year we ran it. And we found out early on that a V trap is not a V trap unless you make the opening really small, because they swam through, they turned around, they swam right back out. So we trapped fish that year, but it was only because they wanted to be there when we cut them off and processed. This is the upstream side. So it's a gravity flow system. We have 2 intake structures. They're 10-foot diameter rotating drum screens that self-clean because all the aquatic vegetation that's moving down the river, they get clogged up. So the entire drum rotates, and it's got brushes inside and out that clean the debris off the screens. Each of these are capable of passing 200 CFS water through them, which provides the attraction flow that goes out through the entrance of the structure. So before I move on, I'll talk about it later, so I'm going to point it out. So the other things we've got going on, we've got a sorting facility that I'll show you later how the fish get up in there, but that's where we sort through the fish. We send all the native species, whether they're a target fish or not, upstream through an upstream transfer pipe. And then all of the non-native species, bass, anything with spiny ray, basically, and non-native trout, German brown trout, for the most part, and rainbow, go back downstream so that folks can still fish them. The fish lock is the fish elevator, essentially, and then there's just entrance too. All right, now for the fun graphics, if it works. So what do we got here? This is basically how they enter and where they go, what they do. So they enter through either of the two gates. Right now, we're still in the testing mode. So we operate 48 hours through gate 1, then switch it to gate 2, because we're just trying to see if any of the fish at any of the life stages have a preference for one over the other, so that we can maybe modify operations later to maximize the benefit to those fish. Talked about the 27 pools already, and then they get trapped at the top, and we will see if it works. Up, watch the little fish. So they come into the entrance, they're going up the steps, they turn the corner at the resting pools, and then they get caught. If I'm really quick, I can close the gate and keep them in there. No, we fixed the exiting problem. We attached some plastic fingers basically on either side of the entrance. So they basically have to push their way through the plastic fingers, and then they can't get back out. So that's how we solved the escapement problem. But so once they're trapped, once every 24 hours, this is where the timely passage comes in. We can't hold fish for longer than 24 hours. So we have to run it 7 days a week when it's in operation. Once a day we process, or if we get too many fish in the holding pool, more than it was designed to handle, but at least once a day. We drop a crowder in there, and we crowd all the fish that are trapped in the pre-sort pool behind that V-trap, crowd them into the tower and lift them up. So once we catch them, this is the close-up of the fish lock at the rails of the elevator. That whole tower fills with water. It's 55 feet tall, and we fill it 50 feet up to the top where it spills over this chute right here, and the fish follow the chute into the sort building. There it goes. That's a bull trout, by the way. So it goes in, but the walls are 3 foot thick because there's so much pressure on that tower when it fills all the way up with water. So it's a heck of a structure, but it's got a ceiling gate at the bottom. We just pump it full of water. So the tower fills with water, and then there's a perforated plate on the bottom called braille. And it crowds the fish vertically, basically, until it gets to the top. It dries them out and forces them to go down that chute. So then they come inside the fish sorting building and flop out on the sorting table into this cool little, it's a knockout tank or an anesthesia tank, but it's also just a temporary holding pool. You can put about 100 fish in there. We've got oxygen bubblers in the bottom, but that's really too many. The theory was that we'd be able to control fish as they flopped out, put 25 or so at a time on the table, and direct them where we wanted to go, upstream, downstream, or in the tank. But in theory, that doesn't work very well. We had 120 pop out in a day in about 15 seconds. So they all go in the tank, and then we had to put in an overflow tank to pull some out because that's really too many to have in that little box. But it's exciting when you get a bunch of fish. So they come out on the table. The table has, usually about a ½ inch water on it, just so the fish don't wipe off their slime layer on the dry aluminum there. And you can see, maybe I have another picture. Oh, here it is. So we have 2 discharge tubes coming off the table with little gates so they don't accidentally go down the wrong pipe. The larger one goes about 450 feet downstream across the downstream side of the dam and drops fish off into that turbine boil area. And that's where all the non-native fish go: rainbow trout, German brown trout, and anything with a spiny ray, except for walleye. The walleye go in the pond. So if you have little kids, take them fishing in the pond. The smaller tube goes about 150 feet and dumps fish off in the forebay. There's a quiet back eddy in the pocket of the forebay, right above our intake tubes, actually. And that's where the native fish go, primarily northern pike minnow, suckers, and peamouth is what we've put in there so far. All right. Oh, and in the back there, you can see our transport pods and tanks. So if we catch one of the 3 target species, we don't want to put them in the forebay yet because there's a chance, especially after we have to knock them out with anesthesia and do surgery on them, that they will be dopey and they'll get sucked back into the intakes and end up back downstream, and we don't want that. So all of our target fish get the royal treatment. We put them in a transport tank, lift that with a crane, which hasn't been built yet when this picture was taken, and plop it on a tanker truck and haul it up to Ione or farther, depending on the time of year, water temperatures, and whether or not there's a bunch of fishing pressure or eagles and osprey hanging out right over the drop-off spot in Ione. We'll move them up further. All right, that's just a picture of the location that we ended up putting the fish ladder before it was constructed, and the major portion of the construction happened in this area that was originally designed in the 50s to be the location of an extra generator. They called it the 5th unit, even though we never built it. We looked at putting it in during relicensing, but it wasn't cost effective because when we had enough water to use that, power wasn't worth anything. So everybody has power when there's enough flow to use a 5th unit. So we weren't able to put it in, but we used it to build the fish ladder, which was very good. So that's what it looks like today. You can see an entrance here. This is what I think in the long run we'll end up using when we're spilling, because fish will be attracted to the high velocity here. And that's the one that shoots out right over the high velocity of the turbine oil. So fish come in, one of these 2 or both. At some point, we could run them both at the same time. So we wanted to build as much flexibility into it as we could, because nobody really knew anything about these 3 target fish and what they needed or wanted for passage requirements. So we just made it as flexible as we could. Then they swim up through the 27 pools, and you're trapped at the top. And the intake is right here. This box is I call it the blast chamber. It's a energy dissipation chamber. When that 400 CFS of water comes into the structure, it's still got a lot of energy, even though we've got energy dissipation valves on it. But the water still has a whole bunch of velocity when it's coming in there. So it hits a blast wall on the far side of this. It's got a 1-inch thick stainless steel plate that's bolted to this at about 60 feet under the water. And at certain tail race elevations, you can see it hitting, and it'll shoot water up 15 feet when it hits the other side of that. Water comes into there, actually goes underneath this whole section of the fishway, and then boils up in this, which is a head box. Basically, this is the settling pond of the fishway. From there, it goes out through a big perforated plate underneath the floor of the fishway here. And then in every other pool going up the fish ladder, there's a perf plate where water comes up through the bottom when the tail water comes up in elevation. So when Boundary Dam fills up, they can fluctuate the pool daily about 6 to 10 feet and seasonally up to 25 feet. Well, as that water in the tail race comes up, we have to put more and more water through the upper portion of the fish ladder to maintain a velocity going out. Otherwise, the fish turn around and they leave because there's no velocity to track them further out. So that's how that portion works. Oh, I didn't even know this was in here. That's the discharge tube that sends fish back downstream. And there's the upstream one. And I think I said that one already. That's the sorting table. Now that it's built and it's operational, we've got probably 15 to 20 years worth of effectiveness monitoring that we have to do. Basically, there's few enough fish out in the reservoir that are using it that we need to, it's going to take a lot of years to prove that it's effective in doing what we said it would do, which was provide safe, timely, and effective passage. So we are collecting target fish downstream of the project, tagging them, releasing them back downstream so that they can migrate up through the fish ladder and we can track their movements. We're looking at the time it takes them between when they enter the area and when we collect them, all sorts of variables, just trying to nail down how effective the fish ladder is at doing the job that we tried to get it to do. So that's where we're at right now. And then, oh, wait, I'm gonna hit back up. Maybe. Then the contractors finished enough that we could run water through it and start testing things. They kicked it on, and within 2 hours, we had the pool. This is the top pool, one down from the V-trap, just loaded with fish. So it was exciting to see that, because you're building it and the engineers tell you it's going to work, but you never really know until you start running water through it. So that was really exciting to see some fish hit the top. And then this was at the same time for I had a little underwater camera, and within a day we had tons of fish up there. That's a catfish, by the way. Would have thought catfish and bullhead would have to travel 27 steps up the fish line. I never thought we'd see one, but we catch quite a few, unfortunately. So yeah, it's effective so far, but we'll see. I didn't have it in my presentation, but so this year's only the second full year we've been in operation. We see cheat sheet pocket, maybe I did. Last year, we collected 11 target fish, all West Slope cutthroat trout, through the full year of operation. The water year was quite a bit different. I can't remember how many total fish we collected and processed, but this year so far, we've collected or processed 615 fish. 190 of them were native species that went upstream, and of those, 4 were target fish, all West Slope cutthroat trout. So it's working. Any questions?
Scott, at one point there was going to be a viewing area for the tank that the public can come and view what's in that tank. Did that ever get built, or is that?
No, we couldn't figure out a way to do that because our structure is built behind the secure area of the dam. So basically, it would have had to been part of a manned tour if we were going to do that. And at the time, we didn't even have tour guides going on because there were just a lot of complications, and we didn't know if that would ever be put back in. But the design, since it's built so far down in the structure, and it's not a volitional fishway, unlike fishways that go clear to the top of the dam and you could build in that upper portion, we didn't have really a good spot to get below the water line and look at it.
And then just go to your website.
Yeah, that's definitely an option. We don't have an underwater camera built into it now, but I'm hoping to put one in that pre-sort pool. I wanted to get enough years of experience to know that there weren't going to be a bunch of fish getting crushed and really ugly things that I didn't want the public to know about before I did that. But no, I'm hoping to at least get a closed circuit camera so that if folks on a tour, if the tours aren't going at that time or they come into the visitor center, it could be on a screen in the visitor center. I thought that'd be pretty.
One more now.
Yeah.
Fish, they're coming through fish-friendly turbines through Box Canyon, correct? So all of these fish that are making it back up the ladder have already probably survived the ride of their lives through fish-friendly turbine, right?
No, I think a lot of them come through on the spill when the spill gates are completely open. So, but yeah, quite a few of them do come through the turbines, and we know that the survival rate through the turbines is probably quite a bit higher than 85%. The highest mortality that we saw when we had to do an injury mortality test a couple of years ago was 15% fish that were injured or killed when they went through there, and those were the largest size class. We had to do 3 or 4 different size classes, and obviously the smaller you get when you're sending it through a blender, the more likely it is it's going to go through without getting nicked. So that ratio of survival going downstream being as high as it was is one reason why we haven't built the downstream fishway yet, and we don't have to during this license. If we can consistently show that we've got good survival going downstream through both the turbine and the spillway, we may never have to put in downstream survival just because it may not be cost effective. But we're going to be monitoring that. This is part of the monitoring we'll do as when we get our hands on the fish in the fish ladder. It's another reason why we had to do a trap and haul. We tag them every time we catch one, we tag it, put it upstream. So when it comes back down through, we can see potentially which way it came through, and we can track its survival on the downstream side. You said you only had one. I'll come back to you. Go ahead.
You also tag the rejects?
No. Lucky for us, Boundary Dam, Seattle City Light downstream of us is doing a large tagging effort down there, and they're putting pit tags, passive integrated transponders. They're battery-free tags. Basically, they're what you put on clothing when you walk through a department store and it buzzes because they forgot to take the stupid tag off. Not the ones with the ink dye in it, but the other ones. That's what the pit tag is. And the tag itself is only about the size of a pencil lead and about, 3/8 inch long, right? So they're really small. You can put them in a lot of fish pretty quick and easy. And Seattle's tagged a ton of fish downstream. And they gave us their data set so we can track those fish. And it just helps us get an idea of effectiveness because rainbow trout behave very similarly to cutthroat trout. And your fall migrators like brown trout are going to behave a little bit like bull trout, or at least we think they will. So we'll have that data, and at least it tells us, well, a salmonid this size can travel up this fast, and just gives us a lot more data to work with early while we're building populations of our actual target fish.
If you have a ratio of reject.
Oh yeah, we have a lot of fish that really like to slip and slide. So yeah, we catch them, we process them, we send them down the wild waters, and well, what is it now? Silverwood. I dated myself. Send them down the Silverwood slide, and yeah, the very next day they're back up. So we just take that as data and send them on their way. But yeah, if I could get something, I could get some folks to fish smallmouth bass, bullhead, and tench downstream. Take them all, eat them, kill them. I don't care what you do with them, but they keep coming up in their nuisance. We have to send them back downstream, and up they come.
Spawner in there, you might bite it in your tartar sauce.
It might be, yeah, it's a good garnish. It really is, yeah. If you find a radio tag, I want that back, but eat all the pit tags you want. They're only about $5 a piece. Did you have another question?
It sounds like kind of the whole goal. So you got fish that maybe spill over Albany, right? And they get into the Box Canyon pool. And so the whole idea, I'm just trying to figure out what the whole purpose of this is. It's because these fish want to go back to where they came from, right? So now we can get them past Box. If we could get them past Albany, then they could get into Port Ponderay and Port Fork, and then they would be all free in theory, and they could be able to migrate as their naturally inclination is. And that's all mitigation because the dams, and we're spending this money to make all that happen. Is that kind of the whole purpose of this?
Yeah, I didn't really touch on the big picture very well, but yeah, that's exactly it. And for the folks online who couldn't hear the question, it was basically, what's the point of all this? What do the fish want to do? What life history are you trying to preserve there? So the answer is yes. Ideally, we would have spawning populations downstream of Box right now. Say Sullivan Creek is the most likely that we'll ever get one anyway. But we'd have a population of all three of these fish species that spawn downstream, and they would be allocustrine or fish that spawn downriver, up a stream. The young come out of the stream, and then they migrate backwards up the river into a larger body of water. They rear there for up to 8 years. Bull trout, pretty sure it's the females, are usually 5 to 8 years old before they do their first spawning migration, and because they need to build nutrients before they can do that. So ideally, that's what we would have. But since the dams have been in place and the true migratory versions of all those species, there are no spawning populations downstream of us right now. But yes, that's what we hope to encourage at some point again. But even right now, every year we have flood overs of all three of those species, not just from Lake Pond Ray, but the tribs upstream of Box Canyon Dam. There are a number of cutthroat and a lot of main stem whitefish that spill over because every winter the river's just fine temperatures wise, so they rear in the river regardless of where they're at. And those fish want to get back up to their natal spawning areas every spring, fall, whenever they want to run. So right now, we can provide that passage to the Box Canyon Reservoir tributaries. And then as soon as Albany Falls Dam gets their fish ladder put in, then yeah, they can go all the way up. Of the fish that we've caught downstream of Box and done DNA on, we've had fish from clear 100 miles up the Clark Fork that I collected below Box Canyon Dam. We've caught fish from the East River and the Priest River. Those are a downstream migrating fish, and they rear in Lake Pond Ray. So there's some fish out there that, you know, if we consistently provide passage for, have a pretty good chance of establishing a population on their own, even if we don't kickstart them. Any other questions? Yeah.
So the fish sorting on that table is all manual by a group of people?
Yes, by two people most of the time. I've got some on calls that I can bring in if we know we're going to get slammed. But yeah, it really doesn't take all that much time to sort through them. The data that we have to collect of every fish that comes through is just species, length, and condition. We want to know, you know, what size fish are using our fish ladder and what time of year they're doing it. We want to know if there's injuries that might be related to something that's gone wrong in the fish ladder or just built wrong. So we're looking for fresh injuries, but that doesn't take very long. You know, you can almost holler out the data faster than somebody can record it. So got usually 1 to 2 people sorting the fish and sending them down the appropriate chute, and then 1 person collecting data. But if we have a lot of fish, it takes us 3 hours to process. And if we have very few, I mean, a lot of fish, a lot of days we don't have a single fish in there. It's just a skunk haul. But you know, a normal day, we're in and out within an hour. Good question. Anybody else?